Hi, this is Sally, and today a friend of mine, I'm surprised I've got so many friends actually, but anyway, a friend of mine recently asked me to make adjustments to her skirts, and I have 3 different styles, and so I figured I would show you how to do each one. So let's get on with it. The one I got her to try on was this one. It's a straight skirt, and I put a pin to the length that she wants it to be made to. This is a flared skirt, and then this is a pencil skirt with a small split. Now with this skirt, she also asked me to mend this, but there's nothing really to be mended on here. So let's see what is actually going on. It's the same on this side, so I'm just going to roll the elastic into place because I think that's all it is. Let's see. Nice easy fix, this one, all the way around. Perfect. I'll have to point that out to her so that she knows if it does it again that all she's got to do is roll it. I'm going to measure from that fold to the bottom here. I'm going to lengthen it a little bit to make it 9 inches. So if I take off 7.5 inches, and then I can put 1.5 into the seam, because I can't do it the same way as this, I'm going to have to do it a slightly different way, but that will give enough room there. So having determined I want to cut the bottom length off at 7.5 inches, just going to make a little cut in here, not a big one, just so that I can put my scissors through the top layer. I only ever cut one side at a time, whether it's trousers, a skirt, a top, sleeves, only ever one side at a time. Because if I get it wrong, 1, I'm going to look a bit daft, and 2, I don't want to have to buy a new skirt for somebody. So I'm going to make my way around, keeping that as straight as I can. A skirt usually has a curve on it, so I need to make sure that I go around in that curve. You could put it on an ironing board if you wanted to. I've got the hem steamed in there, and I'm going to just roll the raw edge into that fold. Keep it as even as I can. I'm not starting right at the back here at the seam. I'm starting a little way from the seam because I want to keep it even. A little bit of an arcing there. So let's see how we get on. I really do not like working with this kind of fabric. I can't stretch it either, so I have to just let it roll through. This was top stitched in. It's going in quite evenly. I'm going to just work my way around to the first side seam. There's only 2 side seams in this, so it's not too bad. Again, let that have its curve and ease that in. I had pinned it into place because I didn't want it walking too much. Because the fabric is quite fine, I can feel if the hem is not quite in there or if it's folded over at the base. Here's my seam. Fold that underneath at an angle and then fold it up. The reason you do that is so that it's not quite so bulky as you go over that seam. It should, because it's evened out, go over there quite nicely. I'm going to pull this little section in before I go over the whole lot so that when it goes over it stays even. And on round. Keep the curvature. It should go in. I am coming into the second side. I've pushed the inside of that seam that way so it goes in smoothly. When I'm sewing this kind of fabric, I actually come from this side rather than straight ahead. If I come straight ahead, I find that the fabric walks over and then I lose the stitches off the top here. And that's why I do it from this angle. It seems to hold it in better. And I'm just going to curve that out slightly like that and let that pull itself in. I'm going to overstitch those few stitches that there and finish. I'm going to use this as the guide for the other 2 skirts. I've just laid this skirt out. I'm going to measure from the waistband to the bottom of the centre of here. It comes to 28 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to make the other 2 skirts the same length. So this is a pencil skirt. I'm going to measure from the top of the waist down. I'm going to put my pin at 28 3/4 inches just in the top layer. Now I'm going to measure down 1.5 inches and put another pin in. Then I'm going to measure from there down, which is 4.25 inches that I need to take off the bottom. with the bottom of my tape at the bottom of the skirt, I'm going to cut 4 1/4 inches there to start off with. I'm only going to be doing the top layer. Move that over so I can't possibly cut the bottom layer. And I'm going to just cut that to 4 1/4 inches all the way round. I did a sample piece on here to make sure that if I sew over, there's no problem. The reason is sometimes I have to start here, sew forward, turn everything around and then carry on as if I'd sewn backwards on that stretch. I'm going to come up here like that, pull the thread through, hold it that way. I'm about 1/4 inch from the base there, that's far enough. And across here, like that, into the back of the fabric there. Having gone across there, I am going to come up exactly opposite and across into the edge of the piece of fabric there. And it's about 1/4 inch stitch length. Exactly opposite and across the back of here. Make sure nothing goes through to the front. And don't pull it too tight because you don't want it to wrinkle too much. Exactly opposite and almost to the end. It's still about 1/4 inch. Pull it tight enough but not too tight. There we go. So it's closed but not wrinkling. Exactly opposite and up. And that should come to the end of this fold. I'm going to change directions now. Put a couple of stitches in, if I can get them in, like I'm going to cast off. It's just 2 or 3 stitches from bottom to top. This allows you to change direction a little bit easier. Checking on the front here. Looks perfect. Because I came up through here, I'm going to come back along here about 1/4 inch, well actually about 1/2 inch, and across. And I'm going across maybe less than 1/4 inch and forward like that. I'm going to bring this stitch forward here. It's about maybe 1/8 over the front there. Then I'm going to bring this back here, just a few stitches, maybe 1/8, certainly not 1/4 inch. I don't want it too long. Pull it all the way through and then another small stitch on here and a little bit over the front. Let's take it a little bit further. There we go. This fabric's actually quite hard to sew through. If you keep it on the front of here, you'll be able to determine how tight your stitches are, and then back and forward just a little ways. Keep that on that side. So you're creating a little cross stitch. Usually I would fold the fabric over my finger, but because it's elasticated, I am not going to do that. I'll keep it flat, which kind of slows everything down a bit. Make sure it's in the right piece, not the wrong piece. And I'm going to do this stitch all the way across. I can adjust up and down if necessary, but I think if I hold that firmly between my fingers, I should be fine. Keep the thread on that side as well and keep them small and together. Just repeat this all the way across the hem if you need to do it this way. I don't often have to do hems this way for skirts, but just occasionally, and this is one of them. So basically the front of your stitch comes up where the back of your stitch went in. That might vary slightly, but as I say, just try to keep it nice and even. You can see it's a small herringbone stitch there and nothing on the front. I'm really pleased with that. Now I had to come across and overstitch and cast off there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come up with my new thread where I cast off, which is the second half of the stitch that's there, and then bring back just as I have been all the way across. There we go, and another stitch here. Then when you look at it, although there is a slight break, it's still the herringbone stitch. I had hoped to get into the seam here before I cast off, but that wasn't going to happen. Seam is slightly off but not too far off to be a problem. I'm going to come here just as I have been. I'm just going to overstitch it in, just a couple to keep that from pulling because it's a bulky seam like that, just so it keeps tight. This fabric is really not very forgiving when you sew it, which is probably why I had such trouble with sewing it on the machine. It really didn't like it. Bring it here and a second stitch over there just to hold it like a cast off stitch. And then I'm going to go across and in through the side of that seam there so that everything's held into place. Then across there, pushing everything into place, and then I'll carry on with that herringbone stitch all the way across to the other end. When you hold this flat, it really does take a bit longer to do than if it's tight over your fingers, because when it's tight over your fingers, it automatically stops rolling out of position, whereas this one I have to keep rolling back into position as I go. 2 little over stitches into this corner here just to hold it. And just like I did on the other side, I'm going to come down and across, and then across exactly opposite here into the fold of that fabric, only about 1/4 of an inch. Exactly opposite into the skirt side, about 1/4 of an inch. The elasticity in here is really irritating, catches my needle. And then down and back up. I'm not going to go right to the end, no need to. I'm going to pull it just to close it, but not too much, like that. And I'm going to do a couple of over stitches. I'm not going to the front of here, I'm just going into the back of the skirt, and that's why I finished it 1/4 of an inch up from the bottom. And then my 3rd stitch, and then I'm going to take that through the back here and on up like that. Is about 1 inch. Cut that off, and that's the skirt hem finished. It doesn't show as such, but if you stretch the fabric like that, then you will see little marks. I don't even think I need to iron that. I think that's turned out really well. Now for the last skirt. Again, I've got the front facing, run this down as flat as I can. That's the only thing with fabric that's a little bit elasticy, it really doesn't do flat very well. I need to take it to 28 3/4, which is here. That's the bottom of the hem, lifted up against the bottom fabric. I'm going to measure that down from there to there, 1.5 inches, which means I'm going to be cutting 2.5 inches off all the way around. The skirt go down like this on the corners, but that is the design. Measure that up. Just going to nick this fabric here at 2.5 inches, like that. I can pull those out, and I am going to very carefully cut just the top layer of that skirt. There's the hole I started, and across all the way around. Now this is going to take some time because this is quite wide at the bottom. I might be able to smooth out some of these corners a little bit as I come into them by adjusting the shape, but I don't think I'm going to be able to do very much about that. I think that's just where it is. I'm going to just carry on going around the skirt hem like this. As with the other 2 skirts, I need to measure up 1.5 inches. Pull this one back a little bit to there and start pressing. Bring that back to there and press. Because this is a wide skirt and it's also rather elasticy, I don't want to be sliding the iron around too much. Press it down and not stretch it as I go. Really steam that in. I need it to be as crisp as I can. Pin along here to hold that in place. Even when I put the pins in, it stretches the fabric. But I need to get all the way around the base of this skirt. Where this seam comes in, I want part of the seam going one way and then the other half going back the other, and line up the sewed seam in place, because I need to spread out the seam there, otherwise the sewing machine won't be going over it very easily. Move the skirt round and do the next section. I'll do that all the way around. First thing I'm going to do is fold this over. This is the scrap piece, and I'm going to do a longer length of practice on here because the last time I did it I didn't go far enough and I had missing stitches. A little bit further and see what it looks like. To be really honest, I don't think I can do worse than was already on there. It's pretty shoddy. That looks about the same as what was already on there, so I'm going to pop it underneath and get going. Here's my seam. I'm not going to start at the seam. Fold all of that in so the raw edge is against the bottom hem like I've shown you before, and I'm going to start a couple of inches in front of that side seam. Raw edge in. I'm going to run the top of this hem along the inside of there, and with a bit of luck it will go in evenly. I really don't like messing with this kind of fabric. It seems to be holding okay, as long as I don't allow the weight to pull off the front or the back. I'm coming in at this angle so that it won't roll off the top, and I'll make my way all the way around. It's starting to walk on the top here, going in at an angle, so I'm going to lift that up, pop it down and straighten it up, and then pull in the rest for that shaping. If it does it too often, I'm just going to have to pick up the foot every time it does that. I'm coming into a side seam here, so I'm going to just roll the raw edge, pull it out, and try to make sure that that stays even as I come into the side seam. With a bit of luck, these seams will go in better. I see that's messing around there. Drop the needle, pick the foot up. It's because the top of the hem is wider than where I'm putting it into, so it's having to be pushed into place. I just don't want to be stretching the fabric. So that's going that way. This one's going this way, kind of. Let's see if I can get this in without twisting it too much. This part of this seam I'm going to pull forward so I don't have all that bulk in there, and I need this to be straight so that it goes over smoothly. See, it's all twisting up, so let's see how we can get that in. Straighten the next length out, fold it in and hope for the best. Down, lift it, let it all twist back into shape and back to sewing. Okay, I've just come over the last join and will be sewing over a few of the stitches that I put in to begin with. Because I'm not sure where they are, I'm going to go over a good 2 inches. There we go, that should be enough. Then trim it all back. It's no worse than the original hem. In fact, I think it looks a bit better. Thank you for joining me on this short video. I did 3 different styles of skirt, and of course you do it all the same way. You measure down the length, you measure the hem allowance, and then you cut up to the bottom of the hem allowance. Do a sample sew on the piece of fabric you've taken off, and if the fabric is really thick like this one, just hand sew it. I wasted some time by sewing it on the machine and then having to take all the stitching out. On this one or this black and white one, if I've missed stitches it's not going to be that noticeable, but because this is plain it is noticeable and you can't do that to the client. I hope you found this video interesting. If you want to hear more from me, please subscribe, hit the bell button, and a few thumbs up would be brilliant. And in the meantime, take care, see you later. Ciao.